Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Today we are joined by Stefano Portigliatti, who is a trial attorney and a partner at Coker Law. Stefano, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you, Adrian?
I'm doing well. Can you start out by telling us a little bit about Coker Law, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a trial attorney here. We try cases for people that are seriously injured, or the families of those who have been killed by someone's negligence. And we each specialize in some sub-niche. Mine is specifically dedicated to commercial vehicles, buses, semis, accidents involving some commercial company vehicle. Then we have, partners that do nursing home negligence and abuse, premises liability, medical malpractice. We all get very, very specialized in one area of that greater area of personal injury. We've been around almost 50 years now. Obviously, I wasn't here from inception, but it's a well-known firm here in Florida.
Can you tell me a little bit about, what does it look like? Obviously, I can imagine how terrible it is when somebody is coming to you for help. That's got to be one of the worst days of their lives. Can you tell me a little bit about what that sort of looks like and some of the problems that they're facing that you're helping them solve?
So I'll just take a meeting I had last week. Okay. So a young 18-year-old kid got ran over on a motorcycle by a semi. So he just got out of the hospital. His mom reached out to an attorney who then called me because it involved a semi. And they didn't know what was going to happen with the medical bills, what the future was going to look like. This is just the beginning, right, of reconstructing his arm. He had a head injury, like a traumatic brain injury. So they don't know where north is right now.
Right.
So the first thing we do is just sort of explain that this is where you're at. This is what normally happens. And not just from a legal perspective, but from a life perspective, right? So we have obviously a vast experience of clients with similar injuries, similar conditions, similar trajectories. So we get to tell them, look, you have to make sure you're seeing a doctor for every type of symptom you're having. Don't discount anything, because things could get progressively worse, or something you're not paying attention to. It could be something serious. So they, when it's an injury like that, it's a lot of what's next? What's going to happen with my job? What do I do about that?
Right.
And then we have the more catastrophic instances where I have a family with 3 boys and a terminally ill wife that lost her husband and dad.
Ugh.
So then, we're looking at how do we just keep the family afloat for that right now while we look at your legal options. Right.
And I'm curious. This has got to be, emotions running high situation all the time. Do you find it difficult to sort of compartmentalize sometimes and say, I got to leave that at work and not bring that home? Because, good Lord, that sounds like, a lot of emotion on a daily basis.
I don't try to separate things. For better or for worse. When I get a call about, I had a call recently where a young boy, 5 years old, was assaulted on the school bus, physically, sexually assaulted. When I get home that night, I'm learning from that, and I have a 5-year-old at home, right? So I'm making those connections just for the better, to learn from my clients to be inspired by their stories and translating that into me being a better person, a better father, better husband. And I think when we it may be because this is going to maybe sound a little weird, but when you can find one version of yourself that can exist in every medium you go through, that's very rewarding. And it's also, I think, the purest expression of who you really are.
Right.
Which I hope we can all be working toward, right? I think we're all very unique, special individuals, not in the, what do you call it? The overstated, oh, we're all unique. No, I don't mean just, let's feel good about ourselves. I believe we're all gifted, unique experiences, unique personalities, unique DNAs, for which there's a unique purpose.
Right.
So the closest or the truer that we can be to that self, I think the more that self can exist wherever it is. So going back to dealing with these cases where there's a lot of sad events, a lot of tragedy, there's also a lot of pride in serving them and helping them.
Right.
There's a lot of excitement in the challenge of going to bat for them. There's a lot of worth in the responsibility. So I don't separate it.
Right.
I think not separating is where, we can really kind of just make the best of it all.
Yeah. What first inspired you to get into this field? I mean, it seems like it's a very kind of, specific niche of the law that you're practicing in. What first inspired you to get into that space?
So that's actually what I think was a cool turn of events. I went to law school just on a whim because my brother was going.
Mm-hmm.
I had no intentions of being a lawyer because we have family businesses that I was going to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly not personal injury. I looked at personal injury lawyers as the gimmicky, annoying TV ambulance chasers. All right. That kind of disgusted me. But one day, just as luck would have it, I ran into a lawyer I had recently met or listened to. Costco, of all places. We connect, and on the spot, he offers me a job. I said, oh, I already have one, but thanks, let's talk. And he goes, no, seriously. So I'm like, what? This guy's very intentional about it. There could be something to it. Let's go hang out. And sure enough, I took the clerkship during law school. And the first significant project he gives me was to build this case against Four Loko. Four Loko was a beverage.
Oh, I remember.
Of a lot of alcohol and a lot of caffeine in one 24-ounce can. Okay, that my college career was made way better by, or worse. It depends how you look at it. What phase of the cycle you look at. So I was like, what? We're going to sue for a Loco for what some idiot did after he drank it? That's ridiculous. But, it's my first significant project. Let me give it a fair shot, and look into it. And I started digging and digging and digging and digging and digging. And my eyes were just like, I was shocked at the recklessness, the intentional disregard of warnings, express warnings, letters, notifications by congressmen and attorney generals that these guys were getting.
Wow.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So big manufacturers like Anheuser-Busch, Miller's, Coors, and all of them had those drinks. But they were causing some neurological conditions and overall conditions that led people to do stupid stuff.
Right.
Because you had the caffeine and the stimulants making you think a certain way, then the depressants, the alcohol, just completely, limiting your ability to actually react as you think you would. So they all left the market. They said, okay, understood. We're not going to make this dangerous product anymore. And these guys saw the opportunity and went head in. They were sponsoring beer pong contests in college where 75% of the population is underage.
Right.
They would stuff the more, let's say, precarious convenience stores around college campuses with their product.
Right.
Where people maybe don't get ID'd as hard, where, you could get away with more. So they intentionally just went all in. And not only did they go in, they doubled the size of these cans. They made it a can, so you couldn't even close it. But anyways, that's a long story. I realized that, hold on a second here. There are people trying to profit off of something bad, something nefarious.
Right.
And there's a consequence to that. And we had a great result in the case, and I was hooked. I loved that challenge of, hold on a second, there's a wrong. People are doing something that shouldn't be done that way. And there are people at the end of the process being hurt by it.
Yeah.
And then that evolved into me just opening my mind and my heart to personal injury. And eventually, within a year of practice, I focused just on trucking and commercial vehicle cases.
I'm just, it's funny. I'm just thinking of everything you just said about Four Loko, and I'm going the years I drank it, that all checks out. So what are some of
we must have a similar age.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges people face when dealing with the big trucking companies?
So the responsibility for what happened isn't always apparent. Number one, for example, someone rear ends a semi. You're like, oh, they rear ended a semi. They're obviously at fault. Hold on a second. There's an area of science called human factors that addresses our standard response or our standard expectations of traffic, how we respond to traffic and surprises, and how much time we need, what cues we need, right? So, for example, had a lady where she rear-ended a semi, logging truck. Logs came through the windshield.
Oof.
Right at her. Okay. Beautiful lady. She survived, but her face was never the same, or her brain, or her emotions. Turns out that this truck was way overloaded. It had all sorts of mechanical issues that he couldn't get up to gear as fast as he should. And they didn't mark the rear of the logs. And they were so long, they hung to the rear of the trailer and covered the lights, right? So if you don't know what to look for and how to get that history and how to understand the industry, so you know that they actually water down the logs before they leave the woods, so that when they get to the plant, it looks like that they're delivering more logs than they actually are, and they're paid more.
Oh wow, yeah. The water.
So there's a lot of nuance in what I do that most people don't think of or know of.
Yeah.
So oftentimes the very first challenge is just people assume that it was her fault, or that it was someone's negligence, or someone must have done something dumb to go crash into a shoulder that's parked on the side of the road.
Right.
No, that's actually a phenomenon that we know very well, that vehicles parked on the side of the road, if they don't have all the proper markings, tend to attract traffic.
Oh wow.
Because you look for a vehicle in front of you to follow.
Right.
So there's a lot to that. The second part of it, and this is a more really frustrating aspect of what I do, is that oftentimes we have someone, for example, a family that loses a father, or actually I have a client where she ended up in minimally conscious state with extensive around-the-clock care for a year and a half before she ultimately passed.
Mm.
The medical bills are almost $3 million.
Yeah. Wow.
The insurance, but the trucking company only had $1 million of insurance. So being able to identify, hold on a second, who's behind this company? Who put this crappy little company on the road?
Right.
Who's truly pulling the strings here? And we see that a lot with Amazon, FedEx, the biggest trucking companies, JB Hunt, Werner. What they do is they kind of hide themselves behind all sorts of contracts and agreements that make it look like it's some Joe Schmo single truck company that's responsible, when there's a huge system behind it putting those bad trucks on the road.
Wow.
So the second biggest challenge we have is identifying the truly responsible parties that are, behind the curtain.
Are there any sort of safety regulations that currently aren't in place that you think should be put in place in the commercial vehicle litigation space?
Yes. The first one that comes to mind is, I have two. Okay. One is safety related specifically.
Sure.
That is called the side underride barrier protection. So over 500 people, this is old statistics. It's probably a lot more than that. Okay. But at least, let's say 550 people are decapitated every year.
Wow.
Right. Running under the side of a semi trailer.
Whoa.
As you probably noticed, or maybe haven't thought about it, but you've seen, the rear of a trailer has a bar at the bottom that prevents someone from underwriting the rear of the trailer. Okay. So what happens? They put that bar at a level where the contact is made with your bumper, where all of the protections are built for. So airbag, crumple zones, you name it. There are all sorts of protections that go into effect the moment your bumper begins crashing into something.
Right.
If you crash into the side of a trailer where there is no barrier, where there is nothing there to make any contact and absorb energy,
That's
that trailer is coming right at chest level.
Oof.
You're not slowing down. There's no airbags. There's nothing.
Right.
So obviously decapitations are over 500. Injuries, catastrophic injuries, are multiples of that.
Right.
And that's something that I'm in Florida. Our own senator, Marco Rubio, our ex-senator, no longer senator, had been trying to pass for years and years and years and years. But the lobby on the industry is very strong as well. And there just hasn't been the political capital to make it happen. So that's one that would immediately save lives and help a lot of very seriously injured people. Because what happens, aside from just the side underride, is that when semi-trailers are perpendicular to the roadway, you don't have the same lights indicating there's something there.
Right.
So if they're crossing traffic, if they're turning, if they're doing a U-turn, which they shouldn't be doing, those are all events that are exposing other motorists to that very dangerous side of the trail.
Big broad side too. I mean, there's a lot of room there, right?
Cover 2 lanes.
Yeah. Whoa, that's crazy. Wow. I was going to say, everybody listening that's ever seen any of the Final Destination movies is totally freaked out right now. I mean, what are some of the key safety measures that people, can take themselves to prevent these accidents from happening?
So, I hate putting the responsibility for this on other drivers, but you can avoid certain. So a majority of collisions with the semi are actually side collisions or rear collisions. We can avoid a lot of side collisions by avoiding the blind spots on a tractor trailer. And I don't know if you guys are going to have any editing, but it's very easy to pull up what we call the no zones. Those areas where there's just the truck driver, unless he's really checking and very mindful of his surroundings, just cannot see what's there.
Right.
You could hide as many as 2 vehicles and 3 motorcyclists around the truck, and the truck driver will never see them.
Right.
So 5 people could be there, sitting there, and the truck driver wouldn't know. So that's one way to avoid that. And you just think of it this way: if you can't see the truck driver's face on a mirror or directly, he can't see yours. So that's one way to avoid that problem, especially if you're a smaller road user, a bicyclist, a motorcyclist, scooter nowadays.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
How do you see like emerging technologies affecting this, commercial vehicle litigation space? I mean, because now there's all these conversations about AI and self-driving cars. And I mean, how do you think that sort of self-driving car idea and AI and emerging technology is going to affect this legal space? And even the roadways,
Yeah. So self-driving is not any sort of short or even midterm, not yet long-term reality for trucking. Okay.
Right.
Because there's a lot that goes into first of all, sometimes the loads just require somebody. Okay.
Right.
Some of the loads that don't require someone loading and unloading still require a hookup, still require boots on the ground. There's also the safety element of verifying the operation, the maintenance, in essence, the good standing of equipment. That means someone laying eyes on it. So for all of that to be handled by a computer, it's going to be a very, very long time. And then there's the reality that most freight in our country is moved by small carriers that are picking up loads as they go along. Okay. And that requires a certain, let's say, mobility, not mobility, that's not the right word, agility of thought.
Right.
If I'm going to get this load, no, that load, now come back around the time. There's a lot that goes into it that a human probably still is going to be necessary.
Right.
But there have been incredible improvements in what we call collisions avoidance or collision mitigation systems. So now a semi can stop. It can nudge you away from switching lanes into a blind spot that's occupied by a vehicle.
Right.
That's helped. We see that helping. All right. The problem is there's also those things aren't perfect. So, for example, another type of case we're getting calls on are semis just slamming on the brakes unnecessarily and then causing problems.
Right. Because
of some technical, product failure. So I think there is there already is some improvement from that safety technology. I think there will be even more. And that's our hope. We do this to affect safety and be a channel of justice for people for whom safety failed.
Right.
If I could retire because there's no more truck accidents, I'd be happy.
Right. Right. When clients come to you, do you find that you have, sort of a similar strategy, over each case, or is it really sort of a, custom tailored case and situation for each individual client and their needs?
In some aspects, things are very similar.
Right.
For example, we always have to preserve evidence. We always have to button down and develop liability, meaning fault for the crash, responsibility for it. In some respects, we always want the case to move quickly towards a trial or some resolution. But there are infinite ways to handle all those 3 elements of a case, right? So, for example, I have a lot of Amazon and FedEx cases, right? I understand how they operate. So what I'm requesting, who I know has information, what type of information I'm going to seek out is different than if I'm dealing with the motor carrier that's new to me, right?
Right.
The contracts that are involved are different. The parties that are going to be touching the load are going to be different. And especially when you get this narrowly focused, as I have in my practice, it gets more and more similar. Whereas if I was handling medical negligence and slip and falls at a Walmart and whatever, dog bites, then that would be very different how I handle every case. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When you think back on all of the people that you have helped through your practice, I mean, when you think back on all of the people that you have helped, is there an individual, a business, a client that stands out in your mind that you really saw a positive outcome or a positive transformation in as a result of your help and guidance?
Oof.
I know that's a big loaded question, right?
No, I can think of several.
And that's what an amazing thing to be able to say.
It's so heartwarming.
Yeah.
The moment you started that question, my heart was smiling. I got a text message a while back from a client. He says, "Stefano, thank you. I just closed on a house that's going to accommodate my whole family."
Wow.
Sounds simple, okay? But that gentleman sustained a brain injury in a collision. He lived in a condo with his wife, daughter, and grandkids. And he could not stand the sound of kids around. This guy lived for his grandkids. He was their father figure. But during COVID, when kids couldn't go to school and they were going to school at home, he had to ask his daughter to leave with the grandkids because it was just causing him too much consternation.
Wow.
And he couldn't believe he was doing it, but that's how bad it was because his behavior had changed as a result of it. Okay.
Yeah.
This case was denied 100% until we got involved. When we get involved, they wouldn't recognize the seriousness of his injuries.
Wow.
We had to try the case. We took every single witness almost that we had in the case spoke Spanish because everyone was from Miami. We tried the case in Jacksonville where Spanish isn't as prevalent as it is in South Florida. And you had jurors that had some issues with immigration. You had some jurors that had questions about witness speaking Spanish in the courtroom, all sorts of things like that caused me some concern. But ultimately, that jury, with not a single Hispanic in it, gave that man every bit of justice he deserved.
Wow.
And a year later, he's texting me, "I got a house that can accommodate my whole family," meaning he got to bring his kids back in to live with him.
Wow.
In a place where he was getting, the space, the barriers he needed, but still had the kids around. Now I see photos of him online and they're in the pool. They're, playing a game of pool or something to that effect. And it just warms my heart to see, something that you don't think of. But to him was a huge deal.
Right. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And Stefano, this has been an absolutely incredible conversation. If anybody out there listening could use your help, where can the people find you?
Truck.law.
Simple as that.
That's easy. Truck.law. And there's only one Stefano Portigliatti in the US, so I'm not too hard to find. They can also call me. I'm very easy to reach. 904-707-0095 is my cell phone. My clients have it. I'm very hands-on that way. And I'm always, dying to help somebody not get just fall into the trap of their case being treated like any simple car wreck, because trucking commercial vehicle cases are not that simple. And you know, one of my missions is to get lawyers to understand that. A lot of my time is dedicated to teaching lawyers that you have to treat these cases differently.
Right.
And I hope that not just clients or potential clients, but lawyers also recognize that and do what they need to maximize justice and also positively affect safety on our roadways.
Absolutely. Well, Stefano, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed chatting with you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Stefano, thanks again.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.